Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Sports Shift, the official NASCAR iRacing FedEx League podcast that is posted, of course, every week at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturdays. So, of course, we are coming off a huge action-packed week of Clash action at USA Speedway this week. Of course, the Clash was last Thursday. We also had a 5-hour night of lobbies on Friday with four things there. And then, of course, we're going to be a little bit later in the episode previewing all of Daytona Speedweeks coming up next week. It all starts, of course, on Monday and then goes to Saturday with the season number 5 Daytona 500. So, first of all, let's begin to maybe talk about the Clash week a little bit. So, of course, it all technically started last Monday at USA Speedway with the iCar Late Model Series. That race was not broadcasted, though, but it officially started with broadcasts on Tuesday with the first iCar Pro Series race of the season, and their season opener at USA for season number 3. So, then, of course, we went to Wednesday. They had their first ever super late model race. That was an insane finish, a photo finish between Matthew White and Bryce Benson. Then, of course, it was the Clash on Thursday night. Man, what a heat race we had. We had about, 18 drivers try to go for the 3 final remaining spots in the main event. Of course, we only had 3 advancing. The rest of those drivers all went home. And then the main event was pretty crazy, too. It was running clean and green for a while under the lights, of course, at USA Speedway. Of course, Jacob Malone dominated, and then there was a late caution flag with 2 laps to go, and it was just all hell after that. We actually finished under caution. It was just so insane. So, of course, bringing in my co-host, Brody Webster. Wow, Brody, what a week we had this week, of course, with all this action at USA Speedway and then lobbies last night.
Yeah, I mean, man, it was a lot of action, especially at the iCar series and Pro Series, having 3 races this week, kind of just showing, a preview of how that season's gonna go at USA. What we really want to talk about here is the Clash and how many people really wanted to see themselves into it. There was pretty much what, 20 cars in
Yeah.
that heat race trying to fight for the top 3 to get in, and that pretty much shows like how competitive this clash really was with how many people trying to get in just off the heat race. And then of course the main event, being yep, like you said, clean and green, and then towards the end, just I couldn't even tell you what happened there, but you know, just a late caution and then used all three, was it 3 overtimes?
Yeah. And then it
All
finished,
three
finished under
overtimes and
caution.
then finished under
Yeah.
yellow. So, that's just how some races go. It's really weird to see that, but you can go clean and green all race and then it's towards the end and it just, it's 4 cautions pretty much.
And of course, that was with all the Cup Series stars. Like the guys that were locked into that race were playoff and winners from season number 4. So like those were all like the stars like Matthew White, Aiden Donahue, Cameron Chandler, Jacob Malone, of course, who won the race. Like there were a lot of the stars of the league in there, and then they really all hell broke loose at the end.
Yeah, I think they were obviously being a little aggressive. And when that late caution came out, I bet you they were just thinking, let's go for this win. I mean, you're obviously thinking that at all times, but definitely towards the end, you want to push as much as possible and fight for every spot you can. And I bet that's where most of those cautions came out, was people just being a little too aggressive. Um, but yeah, uh, that's just kind of how some of those races go, is everybody gets stacked up and everybody wants to win, obviously, and just so hell breaks loose.
Of course, that was also the first like real race test of the Gen 4 car that whole day. Of course, we had preseason Thunder last Saturday. We had an episode before that. But yeah, it was the first real test. I think it really went well, other than the chaos there at the end of the Clash. The racing was fantastic. Even in the heat race, it was so good. I mean, that was a really, really, really good showing out of the brand new Gen 4 car for the league.
Yeah, and I think it is really showing, like, again, how much better this Gen 4 is than the Gen 7 or the next gen. The racing this season is just going to be very enjoyable to watch, and you know, always coming to you live from Ethan Trendler live.
Yep. We got to talk about lobbies a little bit last night. Oh my God, Brody, you were in the booth with me, of course, for Sonoma a little bit, and I think you were there with Martinsville just right at the end. I mean, 5 hours of lobbies. I mean, what a day. Sonoma, of course, was insane. You can go back and watch that unbelievable finish. Then, of course, we had an Irwindale figure eight race. I mean, I don't think I have to say much more after that. The Atlanta Gen 4 race, the new Atlanta Gen 4 race we had was just unbelievable. I mean, there is a that is probably a good thing we're not running that in the real Cup Series this
Oh yeah,
season.
because that was the one race I ran. Well, technically I did run the Sonoma race in the BMW, but that doesn't count much. But the Atlanta race, I mean, you could tell it was like the Gen 4 was just not made to be there, and you could just tell from just the whole racing and how many people kind of killed the car with how much horsepower it has and all the factors of the track and the car combined. But it was definitely a very enjoyable race.
I mean, but another one of the big reasons why there was so much chaos last night, especially, of course, going to the Martinsville main event with the Gen 6 car. That was unbelievable. Of course, we had all these randoms in here. We had, okay, I don't even know how to describe this, but we had some random come up, and he was sitting on pit road, and then he decided he was going to pull it into reverse right in front of the leaders and couldn't
Okay.
react enough to throw a caution. It was like a split second.
We we should put a on-screen visual of what that guy did because that was bad. But yeah, so I thought he like spun into the pretty much spun into the pace car and then he was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna join back up," and puts it in reverse and just takes out everybody. So yeah, that's
Well,
the best way to describe it.
yeah, well, unfortunately, this is a podcast, so most people just listen to, us, and they can't actually watch. So yeah, but yeah, what a night of lobbies it was last night. So of course, Clash Week was fun. It was, I don't want to say it was mostly all for fun. It was kind of a good test of the Gen 4 car, also the iCar Pro Series season opener. But man, lobbies were insane. It was just an insane week, an insane long week all around. A lot of short tracks mixed in there, a lot of beating and banging, a lot of tempers flaring already. My goodness, you think about like Matthew White and Alexander Ortega, Matthew White and Bryce Benton, Alexander Ortega and Cameron Chandler. You see there's a theme here?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think there's root of the problem there, but
Yeah, I mean, wow. What a week it was, though, of course. But and then this is all going to be boiling over. It already starts off next Monday. It is the official season number 5 Daytona Speedweeks for the NASCAR iRacing FedEx League. We are back. Speedweeks are back. Probably the favorite of the season for all these guys. Of course, we've had 4 Speedweeks in the past. They have all never disappointed, but this season it's going to look a little bit different. Yeah, so of course, a lot of new events coming up. It all starts off on Monday night, this Monday night before the Eagles game, of course, with the Cup Series season number 5 Daytona 500 opening practice. It'll be a sunset practice. It'll start kind of in late day, and then it'll go. Of course, we'll go into the sunset. Maybe just at the end, it'll be at night. So a good little bit of a test there. That's the only event of the day, of course. With the Cup Series cars on track for their opening practice for the season number 5 Daytona 500. So Brody Webster. I mean, obviously, opening practice like it's still like 6 days before the actual 500. Of course, we have the duels later in the week, but like, what do you think like the drivers' mindsets are gonna be in all that?
In the practices, I'm thinking they're just gonna try and pretty much do like preseason Thunder and just test out, how what like certain lines are working. Get, probably they're gonna do some races, just pit parties and kind of just see what like how they feel with the car and what lines are really gonna work that day. But yeah, it pretty much is all just gonna be showing just to try and see like how they feel for the 500 and just really getting them ready for that 500.
Yeah, of course. First ever Daytona 500 without the next gen car. The first time we're going to be running this Gen 4 car at an official points race, of course, for race number 1 of the season. As always, the Daytona 500, the first points race. Actually, technically, we'll go to this in a minute. The duels are technically the first points races. But that isn't the full field, of course. So, anyways, coming up next, of course, after Monday is Tuesday's Grand National Series season opening practice. Brody, of course, you're full time in the Grand National Series. We'll see you there on the racetrack, I'd imagine.
Yep, of course. And we're gonna be rocking our new paint scheme, you know, soon to be shown to the field. And, I think I'm feeling pretty confident as long as, that practice goes well, I think we could have a very good race that Friday. but we'll get to that.
Yeah, and of course, the Grand National Series practice with all the brand new Grand National Series rookies. Of course, as usual, there is a lot of new rookies to the league and a lot of new drivers just coming up. First ever starts in the league. And then, of course, there are some Grand National Series veterans that are going to be full time again, like Alexander Ortega, won the championship for last season. Your defending series champion, Cole Wilson, Richard Cherry in the Final Four last season as well. You also look to Jacob Alone. He won the Miami season finale last time. Of course, he is now going to be full time with Ethan Trendler Racing. So is his teammate Ortega. You got Joseph Lewis coming back. You got a whole bunch of other veterans there as well. You think about, of course, Brady Webster. He's actually making his first full-time season, so that should be exciting. How about, though, Cole Clausen, Ethan McMillan, Len Fish, they're all moving down to Grand National from the Cup Series. That is a big, big story. Of course, we touched on that more last week with all the silly season announcements. They had a great night last night in lobbies. How about them winning? The one finishing 1-2 with Ethan McMillan and Cole Clausen at the Atlanta, and then, of course, Ethan McMillan finishing second at Martinsville. That was such a good night for those two.
Yeah, kind of shows M&F Racing might be here to fight for the team title there, with really showing some excellent driving in the lobbies. And obviously lobbies aren't like the most serious thing ever, but at the same time, to win one of them is not like it doesn't take like no skill. So I'd say, you might be wanting to look out for them in the Grand National Series with all of them being full time there. And I think that team's gonna really show some speed on the track and, definitely gonna be fighting for the title. Uh, that's just my opinion, obviously. But I think we'll see them up towards the front in the Grand National Series, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see once the season starts.
Yeah, of course they're going to have all their Ford Mustangs on the racetrack. I've heard Landon Fish is actually is coming for this Daytona week. He wasn't in preseason Thunder. Then, of course, later on that Tuesday, how about the IndyCar, a little mini season where they have three races? Of course, race number one going to be at the Daytona Road Course on Tuesday, 30 laps at under the lights at Daytona. So, man, a road course race, the only one, of course, during official Speedweeks. Brody, are we going to see you there? Hopefully.
Um, we'll see. Probably not.
Wow.
I'm not a great open wheel driver. So and CWR, they really only own a few Indy cars, so we might not be seeing Brody Webster at the track because Cole Wilson will be taking them all and probably wrecking them all.
Well, we better see you in the booth then. That's for sure. But yeah, that Daytona race is going to be really insane. We'll see what happens. And of course, that is Tuesday. We move on to Wednesday after that, and it is a big night with the NASCAR iRacing FedEx Cup Series. Of course, they'll have their duels at Daytona. So, I mean, Brody, can you maybe speak on more what your thoughts are? Like having the two duels, we're going to be splitting them up. I actually might be splitting them up manually. We're going to see how that all goes. It's going to be coming up Monday. Who's going to be in what duel? So two duels. Their top three all get points. 30 laps each. It's going to be such a fun night under the lights at Daytona on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think this is just gonna be peak racing. It's gonna be just like the heat race in the Clash. I have a feeling where, it's gonna be very competitive and a lot of people fighting for those points that the top three gets. And I think you're gonna see a lot of people really pushing, uh, really gonna be aggressive because that little bit of a points lead can mean everything in a season like this. It could be the difference between you making the chase and you not making the chase. I think everyone's gonna be going for those points at the Daytona duels. I think it's just gonna be a great race and a great show. So, just absolute peak.
Yeah, it's going to be so fun. Of course, two races. Teammates will be obviously all be split up. Part-time drivers are able to actually pick and choose which one they want to do. Oh, it's only the charter drivers that are going to be officially split up into the duels. Part-time drivers can do either one to do. They can only just do one though. They can't do both of them, obviously. So that's going to be the thing too with Cup Series, also with the Grand National Series, even maybe making the race at Daytona. Of course, all 35 drivers are locked in for the chartered cars, the full-time guys, but the part-time guys, like if there's everyone there, all 35 of them, there's definitely going to be more than five part-time drivers trying to attempt the 500 with only a 40-car field.
Yeah, I just realized that means a lot of part-time drivers are gonna be getting cut out.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be really insane. We saw it in Grand National last season We'll talk about that more a little bit coming up. So, of course, dual night, going to be so fun. Those two races going to be all live on the channel here under the lights in Daytona. That'll actually be the only event for Wednesday night, so no other practice sessions. It's just straight Cup Series action. The IndyCar race got moved to Tuesday from Wednesday, which it was that slot last season. The duels here coming for the first time ever. We also take away one of the Daytona 500 practice sessions because of this, so it's going to be exciting. 60 laps combined of action under the lights in Daytona. Of course, top three get points. Doesn't matter anything for qualifying. And yeah, duel's going to be so fun on Wednesday night in Daytona. You don't want to miss them. Everything, of course, is going to be live on the channel. So now let's move on to Thursday, of course. Starting off the action on Thursday is Grand National Series season opener. Final practice from the Daytona International Speedway. The final time before it's race day to get your car dialed in on that Thursday before the race. It's going to be really, really intense. We got all these drivers going to see all these new paint schemes on the racetrack for the season. It's going to be really cool. All these new Grand National drivers, all some of the veterans trying to work together with their new teammates and all that under the lights in Daytona for the final time for the Grand National Series. So that's going to be really intense. Brody, you're going to be in this session. I mean, what are you maybe looking for, like, for your final, like, couple of checks on your car?
Wait, you're talking about
Final
a
practice with the Grand
practice.
National.
Okay. I mean, yeah, again, just like how Tuesday is gonna be, just really gonna be working the lines, just seeing how I feel, see kind of going three wide, just getting a good feel for the car again after not really driving it much in a few months where the season is or over the off season, not really driving it much. But, hopefully that goes well as well, and we just show that we can push and take pushes and, just do everything we can possible to get us completely prepared for the Daytona race for the Grand National Series. Obviously, one of the biggest races, so going to be a lot of drivers there and a lot of competition, and I'd say I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Of course, this is the only week during Speedweeks that the Cup and Grand National Series will actually have an extended like couple of practice sessions. They used to actually have that for the Charlotte 600 weekend, but now that of course that it doesn't happen anymore because Charlotte is only on Thursday and Wednesday. All right, so of course that's Grand National practice starting the day off on Thursday, and then we continue the day on Thursday with the ARCA slash iCar combination race for the second straight season going for season number 5. Their Daytona race at of course, the Daytona International Speedway. I mean, the ARCA race here during Speed Weeks never disappoints. My goodness, 40 laps in Daytona. Of course, the combination race with iCar, so drivers will be getting iCar points. The ARCA FedEx Series is only officially one race, though. They don't have any other mini season going on, but it still is that combination race for that. 40 laps in Daytona ARCA Series. It's a short race, technically, so like the aggression is going to be up anyways, like it always is in ARCA.
Honestly, again, kind of how iCar had three races this week and next week. Looking forward to the Daytona race. I think that's going to be another good showing of the iCar series. I think it's going to be a pretty good race, and you know, I don't think, hopefully, I don't think we'll do too bad at it. But again, it's Daytona. You never know.
And then, of course, that ends up all the Thursday action, those two events going on. And how about this? It happens every single season. It's been going on, I believe, since season number 1. Of course, this is the Friday before the Daytona 500. The Friday before the Daytona 500, the Friday of Speed Weeks. It is the busiest day of Speed Weeks, everyone's favorite. Of course, as usual, we start off with Cup Series final practice for the Daytona 500. So there won't be back-to-back days where Cup cars are on track before, of course, Friday and Saturday's action. Of course, we are on track for practice Monday, the duels Wednesday, and final practice on Thursday or on Friday. So, of course, there's no other practice sessions. There used to be 3, now there's only 2, and then, of course, the duels and then, of course, the duels added on. So, of course, Season 5, final practice for the Daytona 500. Final time for these Cup Series guys to get their cars dialed in before they go to work on Saturday for the 500. Then, of course, how about this one? This one is always insane. The Truck Series season opener in Daytona for their 6-race challenge coming up this year. Of course, 50 laps under the lights from sunset to darkness at Daytona. I feel like every single season in Daytona, we have some sort of thrilling finish where cars are crashing 5 wide into the wall, photo finish across the line or something like that. Every race is so memorable. Probably one of the better races during Speed Weeks. It is just so insane. And I'm so happy we got it back yet again. That's going to be insane, Brody. You're going to be in that, hopefully?
Yes, it's the Friday, right?
Yep.
So, yep, we will be there, and we're just gonna make a great showing in the truck race. We are actually gonna win the truck mini season. I'm calling it out now. Who cares about Cameron Chandler and Matthew White? We're winning
Wow.
the whole truck series. Yeah.
I mean, we'll see if that happens. It's going to be very tough to beat a lot of these guys, though, of course. A lot of the full-time Cup guys, a lot of the full-time Grand National guys, going to be all going for that Truck Series, six race challenge. That's their whole. It's their whole kind of like combination, I guess, into that one series, one six race challenge for the championship. So it's up from 5 races before, then it's up from 3 races before, then it's up from 1 race back in season number 1. So we keep every year adding like a couple of races. So this season, it is 6 races, longest we've had
And then
all
is next year gonna be 7?
okay, you know what? That's gonna be dead by next year, by the way. Well, yeah, nice try. Um, so of course that's the second part of the busiest day in Speed Weeks. Then of course, I guess the main event of Friday, it is the NASCAR iRacing FedEx Grand National Series, of course, Season 5 Daytona season opener, one of the most famous Grand National Series, probably the most famous Grand National Series race there is. It's going to be just a challenge to even make this race. We had multiple DNQs last season. We expect the same this year. I mean, Brody, you're gonna have to try to qualify your way in. Like, how? Just take me through it. How is the intensity gonna be? You're inside the race car. You know, if you don't put a good lap down, you could be out of this race entirely. You might not even have a shot to make the top 35 and even race later that night.
Yeah, I mean it's honestly nerve-wracking when you're in the car. Uh, and you just know, like, if you put down a bad lap, you're pretty much screwing yourself over for the rest of the season because not making the Daytona race, you know, as one of the most like competitive races, a race where pretty much anyone can win if they really put their mind to it. So missing one of those races, any of the super speedway races in general, can just be a big fault to your season, and you can really miss out on like a good points scoring finish if you really don't make the race. And especially because we all know there's going to be at least 40 cars in this field trying to qualify for it. So I think it's just going to be a great showing of, who really can put a lap down is going to be one of the most important things because once you get to the front, you really want to stay in the front. And I think qualifying is going to be a big part of this race, especially because you got to qualify to get into it.
Of course, yeah, it's going to be kind of a melting pot for the entire league. You're going to have, of course, all the full-time Grand National Series guys. Then you have a lot of the Cup drivers that usually run this race, moving down part-time before they have their Daytona 500 on Saturday. And then you're going to have maybe some part-time drivers throughout the league. It's just going to be so insane. We've seen drivers, of course, miss this race in the past. Full-time drivers even. They're, of course, usually during Grand National races, the top 12 of the season are locked in on points, top 12 points guys are locked into the actual race. But because it's race number 1 of the season, there is literally nobody locked in. So guys like Richard Cherry, Alexander Ortega, Jacob Malone, our own Brody Webster, they could all miss this race entirely. I mean, it's just so wide open. You have to qualify no matter what. Or you could be screwed. You could be out of this race entirely. You might not even have a chance to make a lap in the race. You might have to just go home like that. And especially with the full new Grand National Series, full season points, that is going to be so crucial to start off your season well. We've seen drivers, of course, miss this race last season and then never be the same, of course, miss the playoffs, just never have a good year, just get infected their entire season. I mean, most notably Rojan Koch last season. He missed this race and just was never the same all year long, missed the playoffs. I even talked to him at the end of the year. He said that affected him throughout the entire season, missing that season opener, the big one in Daytona. So it is going to be so important, so nerve-wracking. This could literally make or break your season in a way.
Yeah, this really can make or break your season, just like you said. And again, because it is one of the biggest races, it can really mess up your mental for the rest of the season. And some people really cannot come back from it, and it really just messes up their whole season in general. And where it's a full points format, a new points format for the Grand National Series or the Xfinity Series, I think that even missing one race could pretty much lose you any chance or hope of winning the championship. Because I think all the guys that are going to be competing for it are going to be consistent and be in every single race and be doing good in every single race.
Of course, there's no halfway break, no more stage points awarded, so it's all at the end. So we might see guys like that are really competitive, maybe riding in the back a little bit early on in the event. Of course, maybe some other guys up front mixing it up there early in the race. Of course, the only points that are going to be awarded, no halfway break or no stage points, is of course the obviously the end of the race points, and then of course for winning the pole, you're also going to be getting points for. Leading the most laps, and of course the 0x. I don't know who's going to be having a 0x at Daytona, but well, you never know. Something crazy like that could happen.
Even though it's just 1 point, I mean, if you get a 0x in every single race, that is 25 points. If you really think about it, I mean, that can be, again, a difference between someone winning or losing a championship. So I think, people are going to try to be as cautious as they can during this race, especially because it's Daytona. Hopefully, you can always hope that there's not going to be any big ones, but we all know there will be, and a lot of cars will be taken out of this race before they could even finish because of that.
Yep, it's going to be such a huge field, and then of course all the Friday action winds down. Man, it is going to be insane. Then we go to the biggest one. It is Saturday. It is, of course, going to be Daytona 500 race day. It is officially now 1 week away. We are so close to the Season 5 Cup Series Daytona 500, the seasonal 500. Of course, happens every single season. It's the Great American Race, the biggest race of the year. Of course, we all will kickstart with all the posts on Instagram in the morning, and then, of course, we'll have our podcast coming out later in the afternoon. Of course, previewing the Daytona 500. We'll have some on-track stars as well up here in the podcast. We're not having any this week, though. Just because we have so much to talk about and all that. And yeah, we'll be previewing the season number 5 Great American Race, the Daytona 500. And we'll be live about, I think it's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, going to be pre-race. We'll have some pre-race interviews. We'll be talking about the race and all that. And then eventually we will drop the green flag for the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. I mean, if you think about it, this could be another race where drivers have to really qualify their way. And of course, it's a little bit different where 35 charter drivers are locked into the race. It doesn't matter for them. They could literally not qualify at all, and they could be locked in anyways. But then you got the guys that are part-time that don't have a charter that have to try to race their way into the 500 where they would only have 5 spots available if every single full-time driver was racing.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see some guys like I think there's gonna be a good amount of part-time drivers going for it and trying to be a part of the Daytona 500, and I think some people's days are gonna get ended without even them putting down a lap because of that qualifying, really only having 5 spots because of how many chartered drivers we have.
I mean, just even like thinking about this, like I'm just gonna name off like 2 organizations just entirely that are gonna be running part-time cars. MNF Racing gonna be running 2, and Redwood Racing gonna be running 4. That's already 6. That's already too many if we have every single full-time driver, and that's just including those 2. I know there's gonna be a lot more outside of that. So first ever Daytona 500 with the Gen 4 car should be so fun. And yeah, it's going to be, of course, the big cap off of Speedweeks. That is going to be insane from the World Center of Racing.
So also, while we are wrapping it up, we are going to start doing some new segments coming up. And if you are a part of the Discord, you can vote on what driver we're going to be having in the booth every week. It'll, no matter what, whoever wins the Cup and the Grand National Series, they will that'll be the first 2 spots, and then we will have another wild card, and everybody will vote to see who will be in the booth in the week of the podcast. And also, we will be starting a Q&A as well, with your comments being the questions. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments about drivers, the races, anything like that, and we can have a little segment where we answer them towards the end of the podcast, but it'll just be a new addition to the podcast and be another segment of it.
Yeah, of course, that's going to be fun. And then, of course, all of the action on track for Speed Weeks this week in Daytona, 6 days straight, all leading up to the season number 5 Daytona 500, where, of course, we will have another podcast episode before that. So, of course, And as all coming up starts on Monday night for Cup Series opening practice for the Season 5 Daytona 500. So that'll do it for us tonight. Of course, enjoy all the action coming up now just 2 days' time from Daytona, starting us off from the World Center of Racing. So, of course, I am Ethan Trendler.
And I am Brody Webster.
And this was the Saturday Sports Shift. We will see you next week. Enjoy the on-track action for Speedweeks in Daytona coming up this week. We'll see you next Saturday.